And welcome back to the True Patriot Outfitters podcast. Folks, we have with us in our interview series a VIP member this time to those of us in the kayak world, especially to those of us in the new canoe land. We have the man himself, Mr. Brian Schiller. Brian, welcome to the show, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. Always like jumping on another podcast and talking a little fishing, a little kayak fishing, and everything in between, you know.
Well,
But
dude,
VIP, I think that's a little overstatement.
Hey, for us here, dude, you are one. I mean, I've had Jody Queen on, and I mean, I'm going to put
Jody
you're
Queen's like up here. Jody's up here, and I'm like way down here, bro.
I'm the stuff on the bottom of Jody's kayak. That's me right now.
Yeah, exactly.
No, man, in the kayak world, dude, you're almost a household name, dude. I mean, you've been around. People know you. They know of the podcast. I mean, you're a famous dude, man. For us, that's big. That's big stuff.
I mean, I've been around for a minute, I guess. I mean, I've fished all my life, right? It's the age-old story. Started fishing with my dad as a kid, but I found kayak fishing in 2018, and that's kind of a wild story, and we can go down that rabbit hole. And now it's spiraled into this thing, but it's been pretty cool. And the kayak community in general, like I always get asked, like, what is it about kayak fishing? And it's just like, the biggest part of it is the people, the characters in the game, and the camaraderie of the sport versus, like, I mean, you get a little bit of it in the big boat world, but I don't know, man. It's just there's something special about the kayak fishing community that has been really, really cool to be a part of.
Dude, I say this a lot of times, and the guys that I have, all my friends and very close friends that I have in the bass boat world, they appreciate when I say it like this, because they agree. I mean, this isn't an insult, but the fact of the matter is, on especially tournament level stuff, bass boat world is very cliquey. Okay, it's just very, very cliquey. Yeah. We have our clicks, I would say, but none that I have encountered that were uninviting, dude. As a total rookie, everywhere I've gone, people have open door, man. They're like, "Come on in, let's go. You're welcome, to the community here." And it's like, this is phenomenal. You're right, man. It's the people.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. And that's one thing, right? Like when I got into kayak fishing, I felt there wasn't like a whole plethora of knowledge and suggestions out there. I mean, there was a few outlets here and there, but hence the reason why I got into podcasting, right? But I started asking some questions on Facebook groups, local club here to me, things like that, and everybody was super friendly. And if they didn't have an answer, they were like, hey, go check this out or go check that out, and everybody's always willing to help, like, I mean, and even myself, right? Like, I've had people, lend a helping hand to me, and, I've always tried to return that favor. And, the perfect example I have, and I know this is already getting off topic, but
that's right.
I was at an event here in the Midwest where it combined, I think it was like 4 states at the time, and all these little grassroots clubs sent their top 5, I think it was, or top 10 guys to kind of battle it out. And it's called the Crossroads Kayak Series. And this guy I'd never met a day in my life from Indiana. I was down there just helping media-wise, like getting photographs, live streaming the awards, things like that, results. And I think, it was day 1. It was a 2-day event, day 1. This guy from Indiana out fishing has the best day ever in a tournament on the water, gets run over by a boat. Dude saw the boat coming, jumps out of his kayak. His boat flips over. He was in a Pelican Catch 130 at the time. Jumps out of his boat, loses rods, reels, gear, his eyeglasses, his cell phone, countless other things, right?
Oh my God.
And this dude was just like so beside himself. Had his best day fishing on the water ever. And I remember it real distinctly. Guy comes walking up the boat ramp, and we're like, what's this guy doing? Soaking wet. You hear the with every footstep. And we're like, this dude fall out of his kayak? And he came walking up, and Susie Roloff was the tournament director, and he's like, hey, I just got ran over. And we were like, what? And this guy was so defeated after that, right? He was going to go home. And I go, look, dude, I got a kayak on my trailer. I'm not fishing this event. Take it. I got a GoPro in my truck. You can use that to take your photos because it's got the, what do they call it? Geo capture.
Yep.
Basically, it shows where
Location
you were when
tagging.
you took that photo.
Yep.
I'm like, I got rods, reels. I got more tackle than Bass Pro Shop. Whatever you need, it's yours. And dude went out, after a little convincing, we got him to stay the night, goes out the next day, has the best time ever on the water. And to this day, we're really, really good friends. And
I
we
bet.
only see each other once, maybe twice a year. But, and not only that, but at that day one weigh-in, somebody from his club had a box, and they wrote Brock Howell donations on it. Guys were throwing in $5, $10, $20, whatever money they had. They took some of the door prizes, gave it to him, some rods, things like that. And
good stuff, man.
I did a podcast with the guy afterwards to talk about that as kind of like a safety lesson, right? And
right.
Had he not been paying attention where the prop of that boat went over his kayak, I guarantee you both of his legs would have been severed off.
Oh my God.
Because you could see the prop marks on his boat, right? And I had put out there, hey, if you have any extra gear laying around, my man can use it. Here's his contact info, this and that. And I still personally got messages, but Brock got a ton. And basically had all his gear replaced, kayak crates, everything he needed, he had more than enough of, and he ended up paying that forward to, other anglers, down the road that could have used some of the stuff that got sent to him.
Right.
And if you want to talk about the kayak fishing community, that's a huge statement right there, that story. And I always reference that, like, so many people stood up and rose to that occasion because a brother in the kayak fishing world had a bad day, and could have potentially been a lethal day, right? But that's how tight knit and almost family orientated that the kayak fishing community is. And don't get me wrong, man, there's bad seeds and everything, right? You got a couple negative Nancy's, whether it's kayak fishing, basketball, football, hockey, water polo, who knows? You know what I mean? But the majority of
those guys are the worst, by the way.
Yeah,
those water polo guys.
But that sense of community is huge, and what has really, really drawn me to it. So,
man, and that's, we're talking about the majority, right? And that's, that's really what, last year was my rookie season in a kayak.
Sure.
And we made the decision. I was already registered for the MLF events. We were there. I had reservations at hotels. I'm very anal when it comes to planning out my season.
Sure.
I don't like doing things last minute and then, getting the table scraps of whatever's left over.
Right.
I do my map study. That's what I don't ice fish. So that's what I do right now is I do my map study. I wear my fuzzy bunny slippers, drinking hot cocoa, and I'm on Google Maps the whole time.
Sure.
And so I had everything lined up, and then a series of events took place, the phone conversation I had with New Canoe and Blake. And these things all come together, and I'm looking at my wife going, I think I want to try this. I think I want to do this. I have an opportunity to get the flagship, kayak, the Unlimited. I had a great conversation with Jody Queen when I interviewed him. Because to be honest with you, when I reached out to Dude, it's like, yeah, this guy's won a few things. I didn't really know who Jody was when I first, reached out. And then I'm doing my research leading up to, I'm like, oh my God, this guy said yes. I've got like 12 followers right now. And he agreed to come on our show, and do this. And so I listened very carefully to a lot of his advice. And we went out there, and dude, everywhere I went in the kayak community out there, it reassured me that this was the right choice. This is where we want to be. And so that boat stayed in my garage until we sold it. I finally pulled the trigger on listing it, and within 30 days it was gone.
Sure.
I think that was like August. I think I sold it.
Yeah.
So it stayed, because there was maybe in the back of my head going, I will say the first time I went out and tried to fish pedaling and paddling only, and this is no detriment to our pivot drive. The pivot drive I love it. It's a great little setup.
Sure.
It's the mechanics of my feet moving and steering with my hand and trying to fish and drop an anchor and grab a net and doing this.
Sure.
Oh, I just couldn't do it, dude. It's just too much. I'm too old, and it's just too much crap going on at one time, so especially knowing all the cool accessories we have at New Canoe to get you damn near hands-free fishing. You know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
Oh yeah, I got to go that route. But yeah, man, the folks around here, it's phenomenal. I love traveling the circuits and meeting all the different characters out there.
For sure. And I mean, you had a good introduction. I mean, if they're in my top 5 kayak anglers, Jody Queen's up there, and he's probably closer to top 2, top 3 maybe. But salt of the earth guy, man, and he's just like myself. He wants you to have a good time out on the water, even if that means sharing a secret spot, a secret bait, whatever. I mean, that guy is a king on the Susquehanna River. But and I've done several podcasts with him, a bunch of my guys on Paddle and Fin, and after every Jody Queen interview, it's always like you get this comment like, man, Jody Queen's the man. I just got a new level of respect for Jody Queen, and he's salt of the earth, man. It's like this year at ICAST, I remember I was kind of messing around with him, but I think he was over in the Torpedo booth, and I kept walking up to him and shaking his hand. I'm like, "You're Jody Queen, right? Can I have your autograph?" Or it'd be like, Jody Queen, you're a kayak fishing god, or something like that. And he'd be like, "Oh man, get the heck out of here," But that's the friendship we have, right? And but I mean, he's literally earned all those titles, man. That guy has accomplished so much in the kayak fishing tournament world.
In a relatively short period of time, too. I mean, he didn't get started till he's like 50, so therefore he is my spirit animal, because I just turned 50 this year, my rookie season, and he's like the KVD, literally, of consistency, dude, across the deal.
Yeah, if he's not in the top 5, he's in the top 10 for sure, and very rarely does he fall below that line. And it doesn't matter in what part of the country he's in; he's always out there crushing it, And it's and he'll be the one to tell you too. Like, you always get that question, like, "What makes you so successful?" And his response every time is time on the water.
On the water.
He goes out and he fishes a couple days a week, and if he can't fish at home in the Virginia, I forget if he's in West Virginia or Virginia.
I think it's West Virginia.
I believe it is too. But if he can't fish out there, he's traveling to go fish a tournament down south or over here or over there, and just always does an amazing job no matter where he goes. And you want to talk about a professional angler, like he is professional to the T. what you want to see out of a professional angler, like Kevin Van Dam, Mike Iaconelli, Jacob Wheeler. Like in the kayak fishing world, that's Jody Queen for sure.
And you mentioned it before. The thing I love about it though is he doesn't have to be loud. He walks softly dude. And carries a very big fishing rod, with him wherever he goes.
Well, he's an artist by trade, and artists are always quiet and whatnot, and
operating on a different wavelength than you and I.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what I mean? It's he'll be the guy that'll come up to you and say hello at a tournament and ask you how your day was and things like that, man. And I think that's important to keep people involved in the sport of kayak fishing in it. And not only that, but kayak fishing tournaments, the tournaments of has brought a lot of limelight to the sport of kayak fishing. And it's important to keep those people involved in that, So if you got a guy like Jody Queen walking around and being a face to the sport, so to speak.
Yep.
It's super important, man. Super, super important. And, I always, reference it as, kayak fishing's for the blue collar man or woman. You know what I mean? Like, I know you come from the boat side. I fish out of the boat a little bit, but not everybody has the luxury of life of being able to, afford a boat or, things like that. So, kayak fishing opens the doors for kids, your average Joe, older guys, like, at a very low cost level, right? Which is so important. And, instead of, I used to get, I'll never do that. I can't afford $100,000 bass boat and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Yep. I mean, I know guys that travel around the country fishing kayak tournaments because it's cheap, I mean, yeah, there are some higher entry level tournaments, but, for the most part, there's options out there for, doing a small monthly for $10 a month all the way up to, a big championship event with a, $600 buy-in, you know what I mean? But compared to the bass boat, like, I mean, what those entry fees look like,
Ouch.
and then you put on top of it, hotel rooms, things like that. Like it adds up really quick.
Yeah. The commitment level, the access, I mean, all those things is really what, and I've been trying to train myself to one thing, because you're right on that area, but I keep trying to teach people this too. When we talk about, say, the top 10 kayak tournament fisher people out there,
sure,
I don't like using the word kayak anymore, because I'll put these folks in a boat and I guarantee you they're going to smoke them just the same. It's just,
I guarantee you, yeah.
It's the added feature of kayaking that changes your strategy. But when it comes to just angling skill, dude, in a kayak, you can't get away with bad habits. Kayak fishing, it exposes skill deficiency. It exposes gear deficiency. You got to be using good gear, and you got to be, dotting your I's, crossing your T's to really make it come together at that high level.
Well, I remember, I think it was in an interview or something with Mike Iaconelli, right? And he fishes some of the Hobie events.
Yep.
And so he's been fishing out of a kayak a little bit for the past couple of years. And, he kind of talked on that aspect. He's like, in a bass boat, if I'm not on fish, I can run 40 miles and go to my second spot or my backup spot. Yep. With a kayak, I don't necessarily have that. Yeah, I could load up and go to a different boat ramp and then put in from there, but that's super time consuming versus, ripping across the lake.
Right.
And he's like, what it made me do is, instead of wanting to move to a different spot, making me break down in finer detail these smaller areas that are accessible to where I'm launching from. And he says that's made him an incredibly better angler, having to do that, being forced to do that, versus, having the luxury of, all right, put the PFD on and let's fire up the big motor and we're going to move. You know what I mean?
The
So
Lake of the Ozarks, Table Rock, these are the prime examples. When primary points are working, you go hit
yep,
the next 30 miles of primary points. For you
sure,
and I, it's like, okay, if that primary point ain't working, that second
yep,
and tertiary better be doing something,
yep.
or we're just going to be beating the banks, drawing wiggle warts through the rocks.
Well, and that's a perfect example, right? Table Rock Lake is one of my favorite bodies of water to fish in the country. And I fished a KBF event down there one year, and the spot where I had found fish, they just weren't there. So I fished half a day, and I drove up to my backup spot, and just from boat ramp A to boat ramp B, I think it was like a 48-minute drive.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that alone, you know what I mean? Not in let's say loading up and unloading, hour minimum, right? In the middle of
Right.
a tournament, that's a huge chunk of time that you're losing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I didn't win that tournament, but I did win big bass. I had
Nice.
caught a real
Nice.
nice smallmouth, but you know, that's the game of kayak fishing. You know,
Yeah.
it's a little more unique, a little different, but it's got its pros and cons from the bass boat world. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, you can't beat being that close to the water, catching fish, and not only that, but like we're talking about honing your skills as an angler, how
Yeah.
that really implements in kayak fishing.
What it helped me do is, I've diversity has been a major part of, my game. Is I wanted to remain diverse in that I could, I'm not really known. People that know me, that know how I fish, know that offshore and I are not friends. I'm a skinny water guy for sure.
Sure.
And what I consider offshore is the moment that I get outside of range of one hard, solid cast to shore. I don't care if I'm in 30 foot or 2 foot. If I'm more than a full one cast away from shore, I'm offshore in my mind. And it's like, okay, dog, now I'm starting to get lost because all I see is water. I got no targets. I got no straight, I got to start getting the live scope running here to get me some bearings, out there.
Sure. Sure.
And I've gotten away with it to a degree. I just have to cover more water. But man, in the kayak, like we just said, trying to cover more water, that's a tough game to try to do. And I love my EPS system, dude. I love my motor guide. They get me across the water on that unlimited, through some really wicked water. I can get there safely, but still, like you said, if I'm motoring, I'm not fishing. And that
Sure.
time is ticking, man. And if I'm going against guys like you, I'm getting my ass handed to me out there. It's like, okay, no, we got to get our bait in the water again and get after it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I've had it where pre-fishing, I've fished from 6 different boat ramps in a day, you know what I mean? Just to go look at different spots and areas. And, a lot of that, like you mentioned at the beginning, map study, man, like that is a huge part of the game.
Huge.
When it comes to kayak fishing, is coming up with these areas that you want to go look at before you even look at the body of water. But as you well know as very well as I do, you show up to the body of the water and you can see the color of the grass, color of the water, the grass, the things like that, and you're like, okay, well, everything I had planned out just changed. So let's look at some maps and re-strategize before I go waste half a day pre-fishing this area that I thought would produce. So I mean, it's one of those things, dude. It's fishing, right? That like I've always said to my kids and my wife, they call it fishing for a reason. It's not called catching.
Not catching, yeah.
And my wife tends to remind me of that quite a bit when we're out fishing and I'm getting frustrated.
So I had two things off of that, what you just said there. I need to know if I'm the only guy that has done this, but I found this to be very helpful. One of the events, actually, it was my first event. I spent half of one of my pre-fishing days and my practice days driving around this body of water, putting eyes on some of these ramps and accesses. So
yep.
I felt good about it because I was learning so much from, checking out these places. And it's like, you know what, this is a solid half day because I graduated beyond I don't fish much during practice anymore.
Sure,
I might
sure,
I
sure,
might
sure.
throw a few things here and there, but to be honest with you, I focus on things that won't change. Fish freaking move.
Mhm.
Rocks and
Yep,
laydowns don't. You know what I mean?
yep,
So that's where
yep.
I'm more interested there. But have you ever done that where you just, new body
Oh
of
yeah,
water and just
yeah.
drive?
I've spent a whole day driving around, a
Yeah.
whole day, not even putting the boat in the water once. And
Yep.
I'm sure you've seen it. The one end of the lake can look completely different than the other end of the lake. As far as what the bottom composition is, the type or amount of structure, the water clarity, like
Clarity. Yeah.
all that stuff plays a huge role in the fishing, right?
Yep.
And and especially like the one that I do it the most on is anytime I go up towards the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
La Crosse, Wisconsin is a huge area, and
I love that place.
usually when there's a kayak fishing tournament, pools 7, 8, and 9 are the ones in play, right?
Yep.
Those three pools can look completely different,
Always.
and granted, there's fish in them regardless, but you got to kind of determine, all right, where are the fish going to be easier to catch out of those three pools,
Well, and it's a
And
quality game too that happens on the
sure,
pools. Sometimes
yeah,
the quality's in one and it's not in the other.
yep. There's quality fish in all three, right? But pool 8 could be producing the quality bites compared to the other two, or 7 could, or whatever. But and not only that, but the actual structure of it is completely different. Like
Yeah.
you know, um,
7's the oddball to me.
it
Lake
definitely is, dude.
Lake
I've fished
Unalaska
it
up
once or
there.
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fished it once or twice, and I think I caught a pike on a frog in spring, I think it was, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is out of the question here. So, I mean, I mainly fish 8 or 9 when I go
Yep.
up there, but that's one where 100% it could, and it depends too. Like right now, the Mississippi River is at an all-time low, but a couple years ago, it was flooded 12, 15, 20 feet above normal pool, and some launches you couldn't even get to,
Right.
or park at to launch your kayak, so that made it difficult. So driving around doing that research, man, it could definitely make or break your practice or your tournament for sure.
It's one of the aspects of the practice period that has actually got me going back to putting my unlimited back in the back of my pickup truck again. I did half and half last year. I started off hauling around in the bed of my truck with a bed extender. Cause I've got a crew cab with like a 5'8" bed. So,
Sure.
but then the other half I actually had a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, I really do love the aspect of being to have full battle ready, and literally I kick the nose off into the water and I'm good to go. But I like that mobility factor, and you and I are blessed to have one, like in my opinion, the best of the big kayaks when it comes to just mobility wise. Dude, that
Sure.
unlimited, she can, if you trim it down, I mean, what's her dry hull weight? Like 85, 90 pounds,
Yeah,
for a
I think it's 84 to be exact, or something
yeah,
like that.
for a 12.5 foot, 41-inch wide boat. I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
compared to the 140-pound competition out there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to use that. I want to use that to
Yeah.
my advantage of being able to get back into these, public access gravel roads and such. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
driving
that's
around,
huge.
that was a major part, just checking the
Yeah.
body of water out.
Yeah.
So where are you? Where is home base for you? Where are you? You're in the Midwest somewhere.
Yeah, I'm technically in Illinois. I don't like to tell people that because the bad state, but I'm right on the Illinois-Wisconsin border. I could be in
Sweet.
Wisconsin if I drove 10 to 15 minutes north.
How close to
Uh,
Marion are you?
Marion.
Yeah, it's like South Illinois.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think that's a few hours,
Oh,
probably
okay.
2, maybe 3. I'm
Cool.
right outside of Rockford. I'm northeast of Rockford, Illinois.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's like dead center north part of Illinois.
We're
So,
working on a deal with Romans Warrior about getting our wall, our Global War on Terror's Wall of Remembrance. We have a mobile monument that we take around the country.
oh, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we're working on penning together a huge event in Marion this year. And so
Okay. Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
absolutely be there. We're going to be bringing the kayaks and such and putting those on
Nice.
display. And yeah, so I was
Let me
just
know
kind of
when that
curious.
is, dude. I'll take
Yeah,
a drive.
for
Heck yeah.
sure. Well, and
That's cool.
I'll be at, for the All American Kayak Series, I'll be at La Crosse. Actually, no, that's the
Mhm.
Bass event. I'm going to be in La Crosse for the Bass event. That's the only one I could fish of their silly schedule. Um,
Sure.
and I don't mean disrespect by that. I'm
Yeah.
appreciative of all these big companies, but
Sure,
yeah,
sure, sure.
for West guys,
Yeah.
3 of 5 on the East Coast, and I get it. It's a numbers game,
Sure.
and they need, but 5 events. Come on, fellas, jump in.
Yeah.
Don't just dip your
Yeah.
toes in the water. Come on in. It's warm. It's good. Let's
Right,
go.
right, right.
But I got hope that the guy they got now is going to help change that direction and is really going to put Bass as a major player because they could be the leader, man. They could do it. They got all the other stuff that nobody else has. So who knows? But
Yeah, Steve Owens has got a very well-known
yep,
reputation in the kayak fishing world, and I
yep,
have all the faith in the world. Like that's exactly what they needed. They had a bunch of people running the Bass Series that didn't know anything about kayak fishing, and that was the
yep,
biggest problem. But progressively, since its inception, they have gotten better
yeah.
as they've gone along. So I will definitely give them that. But that was a huge move having Steve Owens come on and be a part of that. And
I'm
I
excited.
suspect you're going to see a lot of good things come out of that.
And that's the All American. I absolutely love just because of the diversity in their schedule and the hooks you get to
Sure.
face. There are some serious top, and for
Yeah.
every argument's sake, I mean, they're as diverse and around the country as any other national, pro series.
Mhm.
They just we don't have as many numbers yet. I want to say their average was like 40 or
Yeah,
so,
but
but they're getting there. They're getting there.
in there's some really good sticks that fish that series.
Yeah.
There's so many of them.
Yep.
But and that was the thing too, is the main three kind of left the Midwest out of their schedules last year, and I
Yep.
think that's where you saw a lot of interest in All American and what's kind of drawn to them. But Joshua Booth and Tyler, what they've done with that series is been pretty incredible.
Heck yeah.
And I put it up there with KBF, Hobie, Bass. Like
Yes,
All
sir.
American is a national trail in my opinion, and they deserve that recognition 100%.
When one of our team new canoe meetings we had, there was a mention about, for our national team on how that would look, that if you compete and da da da, and they mentioned the big three, and I quickly got typing. Would like to see, please consider the All American in that
Sure.
conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just, everywhere I go, I try to, just get people aware of them that, hey,
Yeah.
when I
I
did
mean,
my research, these guys were, and yeah, you're right, Josh and those guys, man, they run a good tournament. They really do.
yeah, I've known Joshua Booth for years, and he was a big part of Moyak and those KBF events that I fished down on Table Rock. Josh was running those, and
Nice.
Moyak kind of represented that, and for a while, like there was a lot of talk amongst our Midwestern folks, like, hey, man, like. Before when KBF was kind of regional, we had a bunch of events right here in the Midwest, and it worked out great. And when they phased that out and went to these bigger, national trail series similar to what you see in the bass boat world, it's like, oh, well, there goes our, uh, little regional trail series, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
that catered to that. And you saw some drop off in those major kayak trails from the Midwestern guys, but
Yeah.
since All Americans come around, now there's that option, and And yeah, Josh Booth, man, I've known him for a few years, and you talk to anybody that's fished Moyak for years, top notch. Josh always runs a great tournament, and has always been more than fair to anglers and things like that, man. And then to see him bump that up with the other guys with All American and focus on this national trail, man, it's just as good as it was in Moyak, if not better, on this national scale level. And I can see that expanding even further down the road and just continuing to grow throughout the years, no doubt.
So I had the privilege last week here, right before the weekend, to interview the 2022 Angler of the Year for the All American and Moyak, Chad Davison. And Chad, cool dude, super cool dude, and very blue collar, and just puts his head down, grinds, goes to work, and he had a phenomenal season there. And he saying same thing you're saying. Everybody you talk to that has had the opportunity to be a part of it or meet the people love it, and that's saying something. You don't hear like, oh, I guess it's okay. You don't hear that.
Sure.
You hear, no, this is a great trail. These are some great guys to fish against. And yeah, it's a ton of fun to piece it out. They popped up just with us, when travel becomes such a major part of my budget every year.
Sure.
I did that Pickwick event for bass, the one that Drew took last year. And dude, I felt like I was driving to a different continent from out here. I mean, I was literally on the road because it's 18, 19 hours drive.
I was going to say at least 20 almost.
And yeah, for me, needing to stop after 10, 11 hours and try to catch some Z's or whatever, because I'm getting older now and I can't put in those 15-hour straight drives, and feel okay.
It's tough,
that's
man.
The key is like, I could do it, but when I get there, I'm going to be ass and I need to be on the top of my game, when I get there.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I was on the road for like 20 some odd hours, making it all the way out there. Beautiful place, bucket list item, but it's like, I don't know if that's where I want to go. So I'm super thankful that the All Americans, available out there for us to hit and be able to, fish that and then pick off onesie twosies here and there.
Sure.
So what first sprung? I'm looking at your Facebook page. We're friends on Facebook, and good Lord, man, when do you have like any moment? Because you are involved in a lot of stuff, from sponsorship piece to the podcast. You help moderate and run for Team New Canoe. You run our platform, for our team meetings out there. How did that all begin for you when it comes to, like, say, paddle and fin? What got you into that?
Whew. Oh boy. Where did we go? Well, I briefly mentioned it before. So 2018, I started kayak fishing, and me and a really good friend of mine, the two of us started paddle and fin together, but
Sweet.
He had always wanted to get a boat and never really got a boat or anything like that. And then he was like, I think I'm going to try this kayak fishing thing. Right. And I was like, yeah, check it out. I was like, and this is God's honest truth. I was like, go check out New Canoe. I had known about New Canoe since I believe it was like 2011. I had actually emailed back and forth with Blake back in the day, during the .com era. I had this outdoors website. It focused on fishing and hunting, and we were looking at maybe trying to turn it into like this e-commerce thing. And I forget how I found New Canoe, and I was like, these are pretty interesting, like they were promoting their kayaks as like virtually untippable and things like that. And that was in the Classic 10 and Classic 12 days.
I was going to say that was the Classic series back then.
Yeah. So, I was like, you should check out New Canoe or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. My buddy, he dives way too deep into research and backlog and things like that. Right. And granted, I'm kind of the same way in certain aspects, but I was like, well, if you're going to get a kayak, I should get a kayak too. I fished out of a canoe as a kid a ton, and we're bad influences on each other. That's what we always say. So I remember I went and bought an Ascend 128T from Bass Pro Shop. And
Nice.
I had that boat for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and I was like, this thing's a piece of garbage, and sold it to a kid that worked for me at the time. And my buddy Scott, he had found the local dealer here, Rocktown Adventures, and he's like, dude, they got this thing demo day. I'm going to go down with my son. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me know how it goes, So they went down and they demoed a bunch of different boats, and ultimately he bought a Frontier 12, so that way he could go tandem with his son, or he can go out solo. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool,
Right.
Well, me being the guy that I am, I'm like, I can't get a new canoe. Scott got one. I got to get something different, So ultimately, I sold that Ascend, and I went to a demo day, and I actually thought I was going to buy a new canoe Pursuit. But and I didn't know much about kayaks, and him and I, when we tried to do some research, like there wasn't a ton out there. There was like Chad Hoover, Gene Jensen, and maybe a few things out there as well, So
Right.
we were kind of in the dark, and I ended up buying a Bonafide SS 127 because I was like,
nice.
I'm going to stand and fish the whole time, this and that. Lo and behold, I hardly stand and fish. Like there are certain occasions, but most of the time I stay in the seat, whatever.
Same.
Well, at the time, him and I both listened to a ton of podcasts, and we're like, I forget how the conversation started, but it was like, what if we started a podcast talking about kayak fishing and, share our experiences and, kind of help, people get into the sport and maybe answer some of those questions that we had getting into it that, we couldn't find information on. I was like, well, there's one podcast I listened to. There's this free platform called anchor.fm, and like we could upload our stuff there, and so it just spiraled from there.
Wow.
And I remember we recorded our first episode, and it was like Scotty hit record, and I was like, all right, what do we do now? And it was like, hi, I'm Brian, and I like to fish, and now you can't shut me up, right? But Paddle and Fin is kind of spiraled from there. Like the first year, I think we did like 48 episodes or something like that. Or I take that back. In the first year, we started in, I think the first episode was released in June. And fast forward to that following June, Scott had left the podcast. I always claim that he joined the yacht club, but he went and bought a boat and, condo up on Lake Delavan. And,
Right.
he was with the hoity-toities, and I give him a hard time about that all the time. But a good friend of mine who I actually met, and he was like our first or second guest on Paddle and Fin, Jay Randall. He ended up filling Scott's shoes, and him and I together have grown Paddle and Fin into, this huge collective where we release a new episode 7 days a week, pretty much 11 months out of the year.
Wow.
We usually take a break during the holidays. So we've been on break. We're about to come back. January 9th will be the first episode. But, we got this collective of like 14 or 15 guys and gals that each have their own show. So like on Mondays, like we got Bass Fishing for Noobs. It focuses on, talking about different techniques, maybe rigging your kayak, things like that. It's more geared towards the beginner, but I've had a lot of advanced fishermen, big names feel like, dude, I took away a lot from that so-and-so's episode or whatever,
Right.
And, we got a product review show. We talk to, manufacturers around the world. Like, we even got a hunting segment, a saltwater segment. We got all these different, like, shows.
That's
So
awesome.
every day of the week, you got a new show, and some guys do like 2 shows a month. So every other Sunday, Chasing the Tide, which is our saltwater segment, is on, and vice versa. So, that whole
Very
thing
cool.
kind of started and took off and kind of exploded. And, in 2019, I wanted to fish tournaments and stuff. So I've fished the KBF Trail Series and made it all the way through the Trail Championship, all that stuff. And I think like AOY wise, I was like 34th or 36th out of the nation, which was really cool. And like,
Yeah.
when I started the season, I was like, if I could break 100, top 100, I'd be content with that. If I break top 50, even better. Never thought I'd be like that high up on the list. And
Right.
that was the year that Derek Brundle won Rookie of the Year.
Oh, nice.
And I think I was like 3 spots behind him or something. Like we were
Good
kind of
stuff.
competing. So it's
Right.
funny, now we're teammates on New Canoe, but
Yep.
dove into that. And then I was like, I remember when I met Jay and we did this podcast with him, and he was like, yeah, I'm on the Jackson kayak team. And I was like, kayak companies have like sponsored teams and stuff? And he was like, oh yeah, dude. And I was like, how the hell does that work? Right. And that's where like that kind of like, I was like, I'd always known about fishermen being sponsored. And,
Sure.
as a kid, when I fished a bunch, I was like, yeah, Mike Iaconelli, I'm a huge fanboy, and I know
Yeah.
people love him or hate him, but when I saw Mike Iaconelli catch a fish on TV in a tournament when I was a kid, I was like, that's how I feel inside when I catch a fish,
Exactly.
Like I was always shy and didn't, show that emotion, but in here I felt it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I was like, man, how cool would it be to be him one day? You know what I mean? And that thought always stuck in the back of the mind. And obviously I didn't get into kayak fishing until a little later in life, but when Jay told me about, Jackson kayak fishing team and this and that, like, I was like, how do I do that? And he was like, come, young grasshopper, let me show you the way. So, Jay kind of, explained it to me like, like companies are looking for media and representation and this and that. And I was like, well, I could do that. You know what I mean? Like, heck yeah, what do I get out of this? And he's like, well, it depends what you do. And, it can, and I was like, wait a minute, you mean I could save a bunch of money for switching my car insurance to Geico? Like, let's do this. You know what I mean? like let's roll,
Yeah.
So
15%.
yeah, right. So I was like, all right, well, let's start, and I didn't know where to begin. And I know like Jay had given me some pointers, and he's like, dude, just do some research, and I never forget it. Like I found a video series that Chad Hoover had put out in regards to getting sponsorships and stuff.
Oh,
And
nice.
I took a lot of tidbits from that and, kind of came up with my own formula, so to speak. And,
Right.
that's something I'm really passionate about, because I get that all the time. Like, how'd you get so involved with all these companies and this and that? And, I've done probably more podcasts than I care to talk about that, just talking about that subject. And, but it's something I'm passionate about, right? Because I didn't really have like an outline of what this looks like and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and things like that. So, I mean, the door's been shut in my face just as many times as it's been opened, right?
If not more. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the biggest thing is, like, you're going to shovel and eat crap, PG version, before you actually get anywhere. And, the longevity thing, like, just because you're doing it for a year doesn't mean like, oh, all of a sudden, New Canoe is going to come knocking on your door, or,
Right.
brand X, Y, or Z, and, I got involved with that. And, fast forward, 2020, I went over to New Canoe. And it was a good fit. Like I'd always been a New Canoe fan, and like Matt Gibson, who was my regional director, he's like, I always knew you were a closet New Canoe fan, and I was like, yeah, well, I'm out now, bro. I'm out. You know?
That's right. That's right.
But I mean, it's funny how that all kind of worked out and went full circle, right? I found out about this brand in 2010, 2011, and now like I feel like I'm a big part of that brand now. I do a
You're,
podcast for them.
I was going to say, you're one of the faces of the entire thing, especially to those new guys like me,
Sure,
to the
sure, sure, sure.
team. You are some of those guys that we look to see that
Right.
guidance piece. That's awesome, man.
And I'm an open book, right? And part of so like the way that whole podcast came up, you know, I'll be the first to admit I took the idea from a good friend of mine, JD DeRosier, who was part of New Canoe, and he had hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, I'm on New Canoe's team now, and I was thinking about doing this podcast thing. Like, what kind of equipment do I need?" And he briefly told me like the theory and the concept behind it. Well, JD ended up leaving to go work on another brand's content. And so when I came aboard, I kind of reached out to Everett Park and Blake, and I was like, hey, so-and-so, JD had told me like originally you guys were talking about doing this. Like, I think it would be a great way to help spotlight our team members, our dealers, products when they're coming out, answer customers' questions, things like that. And, I'd love to do it. Obviously, I got a background in it with paddle and fin, so
right.
I'm like, they're like, okay, this sounds great. What do you need from us? And I was like, just access to the Facebook page and the YouTube page, so that way these shows can go up there. And they're like, that's it. And I was like, yep. That kind of started, right? But part of that too is I get to go to shows, ICAST, ever since I got into kayak fishing, I always heard about ICAST, and I was like, I want to go there. I want to be there,
Bucket list
and
place. Yeah.
New Canoe, super fortunate. Blake asked me to go the one year, and turned out great. Got to do a bunch of shows from there, things like that, meet a bunch of important people. And, in return, like I do the same thing for my local dealer. It's show season now, so my show schedule is kind of crazy, but working shows, I've started to do seminars at these fishing shows, trade shows, things like that, which, I'm super passionate about, man. Like, I've had the conversation with my wife in this past year. I spent some time kind of taking a back seat and kind of guiding a little bit, both out of the boat and the kayak, right? And I'm like, I've caught so many fish, like, I don't really care, but I get really excited seeing other people catch big fish. You know what I mean? So,
you got it bad when you get just as zooked for their success. Yeah,
dude. Sure. And it's been absolutely phenomenal. So, that whole education thing, going back to day one, like getting into kayak fishing, is that education aspect of paddle and fin, things like that. And it's been quite a journey, man. And I've, with it being, the new year and everything, kind of reflecting back and seeing some of these memories and stuff. And I had one pop up the other day from, talking about, the 2019 season. It was, that was the year I got to, go chase down the trail series and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, like to see where I was then and where I've come now, has been pretty incredible. And yeah, that's the photo from, this year's ICAST. And
yeah, that's, and the characters in here, man, this is so phenomenal. Just seeing.
Oh, there's some characters in there for sure.
And whose is this? You see that little photo bomb? The kid. We got a kid hiding in the background.
That's Blake's daughter.
Is it Blake's daughter? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like, it's got to be a daughter of one of these guys in here.
Yeah, that's Blake's daughter. But
that's awesome.
I mean, definitely a list of characters there, but all good dudes, man. Like, couldn't say a bad thing about any one of these guys on the screen, and they've been super supportive of me, and I try to support them as much as possible, man. And that's what makes Team New Canoe so successful. Is just a good group of folks, man. And it's really hard to find that core group that gels well together. And like anything, you're going to have some heads button and some disagreements on opinions and things like that over the years.
Sure,
but
sure.
It's been a crazy journey, man. Like some of the places I've been, things I've done, the people I've met, and not only that, but recently, through connections through one of the companies I work with, I now work in the fishing and outdoors industry. I do marketing for Dubro Fishing, Pine Ridge Archery, and then they also own a model RC company as well. So, like kayak fishing has taken me from, oh, this would be a cool thing to do, all the way to a career path.
You're finally doing something that you love.
Dude, I've only been there a little bit, and I just told the boss's wife the other day, because she works there as well, and I was like, I feel like I haven't worked in over a couple of months, just because I enjoy what I do. I love coming to work. Like, it made me realize, like, I wasn't miserable at my old job or career or whatever you want to call it, but like, not being there made me realize how, like, just not happy or satisfied with what I was doing. And granted, like, I was in the construction industry for like 20 years, and it was like beating a dead horse at that point. But now it's like a whole new animal, and I like to be creative, obviously, as you see all the media stuff and things that I do, and being able to use that creative outlet on a daily basis now is been a huge godsend for sure.
I spent 23 years in the IT industry. It was the path that I chose to, go make a living. Did a few other things, other industries in between this and that. And there was something that I learned, and it was actually my experience in the financial industry. I spent several years in that, and I was actually very good at it.
Yeah.
What that taught me, though, in my 30s is that you can be really good at something and still not like it.
Sure.
And that's where I was at with the financial
100%.
industry. IT, it had just gotten to the point. I unfortunately I did time with government IT, which is even worse. And it got to the point for me where you just find yourself wondering, what am I doing? What if I'm not here? Who cares? Really, at the end of the day, it'll be 12 other people behind me that'll fill right in. It wasn't until we started doing this. And so, yeah, brother, I'm right there with you in that this is what I do now. And, full time, but chasing, the trail and working with the True Patriot Outfitters and Roman's Warrior. And there isn't a day go by that I don't count my lucky stars that I have a very successful wife that has given me the platform to try this. We didn't go all in until 21. That's when this started, for us, really trying to make a run at this. And I accept the fact that I may have to grow up again, and I'm fighting like hell to make sure I don't ever have to do that. But one of the things I wanted to just echo with you is the Team New Canoe. I'm very picky about who I associate with when it comes to, well, I guess let me preface this. There's always the assumption in our industry that you put a name on your hat, you put a name on your shirt, you put it because they give you money to do so. But one of the things that I learned early on, and it was a very offbeat article, and it was a very candid interview that Kevin Van Dam had done. And his statement, I'm paraphrasing now, I'm not quoting him, but I'm paraphrasing the statement that he delivered, which was, no amount of money is ever enough to repair bad representation or a bad experience for a customer. Yeah. He believed that from, that was kind of like, again, I'm totally butchering the way he said it, but it was basically that piece that don't ever think that just because I got my name next to something that it's just because it's a monetary deal. And
Mhm.
most of the people do think that, and they think these things. But for me, I have a very small list of sponsors, if you will, and they range from nothing more than a discount to a promise to the future, all the way up to money being exchanged. We have a
Sure.
wide range of supporters, and I have never been as proud to wear a logo and tell people that I'm now a part of a team in recent history as I have with Team New Canoe. After meeting Blake, working with the folks at the main headquarters, meeting all you guys in our team meetings, it dawned on me just how special of a deal this is. Are we saying New Canoe's the best thing on the planet? No, of course not. But for those of us that have used it in the way we love to use it, I honestly and seriously can't envision fishing out of anything other than. I've had opportunities to explore other brands. Lord knows that that's out there. And when I think about it, I'm like, bleh, I don't want to, man. I
Yeah. Yeah.
love what I fish out of, and I love knowing who's behind that. And it's a special deal, man. And I'm proud, I'm excited, and that's why it's easy for me to share that with other people, going, you need to get a piece of this, buy one of these, let's go out in it. I've got 4 unlimited sitting in my garage. Let's go out. I'll let you, test one out, and you're gonna love, it the way we do. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, I've been on some other teams and part of companies' pro staffs and sponsorships and things like that. And, I kind of learned that the hard way when I first got into, looking for some partnership opportunities. And,
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with one company. They were young, and I was like, my mindset on it was, all right, well, they're growing. I'm going to help them grow. We can grow together. And lo and behold, like, the folks that own that company were not the best people in the world, and trying to not necessarily repair, but distance myself from that. And, they had some of my photographs and things like that on their website. And I had to be like,
Mm-hmm.
look, remove now. Otherwise we're going to have to take the next step,
Yep.
And, and I'm the same way, man. Like, I do have a list of companies that I work with, but all of them I've worked with for quite a time, and
Yep.
they're all products I use and believe in and things like that. And you have to stand behind it, no matter the amount of money. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
it's. I mean, you could offer me $1 million to represent a turd. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Like, it's just like, if I can't stand by it, like, because at the end of the day, it's your name that's on that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Totally.
and it's
Credibility. It matters.
like you said, man, it's really hard to repair that scar that's been left on your name at the end of the day, So,
Especially in our industry.
oh, dude, and going back to, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or was it before, but the fishing industry, like, everybody thinks it's this huge thing, right? And
Right.
it's really not. It's this very small, tight knit community, and everybody talks with everybody. You know what I mean? And
Yes, they do.
once it's like getting banned from a casino, the blacklist, right? And that's what I refer to. And it's funny. I forget who it was that told me at a very early on point in me kayak fishing and working with companies, and it was like, there's always somebody watching. You never know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's people within the industry that talk and don't ever get, blackballed. And I was like, blackballed, like, or blacklisted. And I was like, what the heck, And, um, I've seen it where guys, like, they jump brands every season, you know what
Right.
I mean? And, like, that's blacklist number one, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And, so when somebody told me that, I was like, oh, that's a real good point. Like, I treat sponsorships pro staff, whether it's a discount all the way up to paid, as a job, and that's the
Yes,
way you
sir.
should treat it, right? And
Absolutely.
I think a lot of guys miss that. They just, like you said, look at it as a logo on their jersey,
Yep.
and it makes them feel like a badass. You know what I mean?
Patch pirates.
Where exactly, and
Right.
you know, a lot of guys don't realize what that is. You know, and when you start treating it like a job, you'll start getting respect like it's a job, and
Yeah.
you know, promotions and raises and things like that. You know what I mean? So,
What
yeah,
you
it's an interesting deal we live with.
you had mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to circle back around to it. You had asked, you had said, that one of the most asked questions you get is about the, how you turn this into, a job and sponsorships, things this. I too get asked that a ton about, hey, you got to teach me how to do this sponsor thing. If I'll share that, hey, we got a new sponsor for 2023 coming in, and people immediately, hey, how'd you do that? What's the secret? And it's finally getting to the point now where I can articulate it a little bit cleaner. And unfortunately, they hate the answer because there is no magic button for this. The answer is, it's called a relationship. People need to get to know who you are, and you need to get to know who they are. If there is not a two-way avenue of value there that you can bring and that they can bring, unfortunately, you're probably just gonna have to settle at being real good friends, and maybe you still use their product because you really like them. But maybe they're not in a position to do something. It's that relationship that and none of this stuff happens overnight. Now, will there be exceptions to the rule? Of course there will.
Sure.
But as a whole, if you're looking for the magic wand, it's called be honest, be transparent, get to know people, and be willing, like you said, you're going to have to eat a whole lot of crap sandwiches on the way there. And that's just the way it falls out. It's none of this stuff is a magic wand. It's not, dude, I got a master's in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. And I can flat out tell you that it has nothing to do with obtaining these sponsorships.
No.
It does help in one area. And that is the other piece I try to tell people is, first step is, if you've never owned a small business before, go learn what it takes to own one.
Yeah.
Because that's going to tell you what's important to them.
Yep.
Because what you think is important probably isn't. So if you get to understand where they're coming from, then you can be honest with yourself and say, can I help them? Is there anything I can honestly do, to do this?
Yeah.
Not to consume it, but my wife, this last email that I sent off to somebody that I've been working with for a while, she had me up the ante a little bit. She's like, you should ask them about covering some fuel for the year. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I'm in my head, I'm like, are we there yet in the relationship where I could be that bold? And I remember telling her, I don't think I'm that big enough yet. I mean, I just 1 year in the kayak game. I got a ways to go before I could be asking this. But like she said, she goes, it's not about that. It's about you've worked with them. They know you better now. So we did. They said, no, thanks, not yet, but let's revisit it next year. And I said, cool. But they agreed to everything else that I asked for. So we're in, but yeah, it takes time.
And that's just it, right? Like, you got to come at it from a business aspect, right? And John over at Yak Gadget said to me once recently, he goes, look, brother, if it ain't making dollars, it ain't making sense, And I was like, how true is that?
There's a t-shirt, man. There's a t-shirt.
Yeah. You should tell him to coin that right away. But,
there you go. I see what you did there. Coin sense. Mm-hmm.
It's
thanks for turning Dad Jokes podcast.
Yeah, right. But it's so true, right? Like, a lot of guys, I've seen so many people, like, this is classic. You'll see him post on Facebook or Instagram. Super excited to announce my partnership with brand X, Y, and Z, and looking forward to the 2023 season, this and that. That's the one and only time you'll ever see them say anything about that brand on their social media platform for the rest of the year.
Right.
And lo and behold, the following year, they're with a competitor, You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Until they get on that blacklist. And, you know, so many guys, they get to that point and they're like, well, I made it. What else do I need to do? You know, like, who cares? I'm already here, you know, like, and it's interesting, you know, like, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, I was guilty of that a little bit back before I realized what everything was. Right.
I was going to say, I think we
And
all are. We all
yeah,
started somewhere.
well, and the thing is like, well, how do I get to what you do? You know what I mean? Or how do I get to that higher echelon? Well, produce high quality photographs, videos, think outside the box, do seminars. Like, you know, in different teams or brands that I work with, you know, there's always like these call to actions. Hey, we need photos of this, or hey, we
Mm-hmm.
need videos of this, or hey, we're going to be working this trade show. Anybody in that area willing to come and work for the weekend or whatever it may be. And if you're not jumping on that stuff and you never reply to it or never contribute to it, you're going to stay where you're at, or you're going to be, you know what I mean? And like
Yep.
most teams or brand deals, things like that, they usually have a structure. This is what we expect from you. This is
Yep.
what you can expect from us, right? And if you don't meet that criteria, like, and then and I've seen this too, like people don't fulfill their duty. Brand has fulfilled their promises, but you know, angler, whoever hasn't fulfilled theirs, you know, come that renewal season or next season, you know, they get dropped, and then they're like, you know, screw brand X, Y, and Z, you know, they let me go and this and that. And you only see that part of the story. But if you talk to
Right.
so and so from that brand, you know, they're like, yeah, the guy signed up and he gave us 2 photos the whole season and they were crap. Like,
Yeah.
of course we were going to let him go. You
Or
know what
they
I mean?
wait to
And
that
again,
11th hour to drop like 12, posts instead of 2
oh yeah,
days,
yeah,
thinking they
yeah,
met their
yeah,
quota. Right.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny, like there's one company I work with. They make you reapply every year, and it's a drawn out process, right?
Yep.
And there's guys that, you know, in the past have just not reapplied because they're like, I've been around since before this whole thing. Why should I have to do this? You know, whatever. And they have since been dropped from that brand. And, you know, and then they're like, oh, you know, bitching and moaning and,
Right.
you know, they end up, you know, on the wayside. And it's like, however, that company that has that very strategic way of going about their pro team and ambassador program, um, probably one of the most successful companies out there from the marketing aspect, because they get quality content, because the people that are there went through all the hoops and bounds to get there. So, you know, they're going to continue on that process. Whereas, like,
Agreed.
you know, everybody's talked about it, like Woo Tungsten, like,
Oh, right.
you know, like as long as you
Enigma.
fill out a thing, you're on, you know
You're
what I
on.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's just a big joke in the fishing community, right? Like I think one guy had his dead grandma apply and she got on, you know, like
Right.
filled out all her info and like
Right.
they did no research, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at it, like, you know, certain brands need certain things, you know, whether, and most of it relies around media, so to
Yeah.
speak, you know, like not
Exposure.
everybody is a Jody Queen, a Russ Snyder's, you know, whoever. So, you know, one of the things that a good friend of mine told me as I got heavier and heavier into this, and he's like, what's your niche, man?
Yeah.
He's like, let me ask you this. And this is probably the greatest piece of advice I ever got. Because at the time I was doing the Paddle and Fin podcast. I was on several different brand teams. I was trying to put out 2 YouTube videos a week or something like that. Yeah, I think I was doing 2 a week. I was trying to help run a tournament series. I was trying to fish tournament series. And he was like, dude, how much energy, or he's like, out of all these things you're doing, what is the thing you feel like you're the best at? And I was like, I don't know, podcast, because I talk a lot. And he laughed, and he's like, okay, so podcast is your niche, right? So right now, how much time are you spending on that? And I was like, what do you mean? I spend, X amount of time a week. And he's like, okay, well, if you weren't fishing kayak tournaments and you weren't doing the YouTube videos and you weren't doing this and that, now you got all this extra time. How much bigger and better could your podcast be versus spreading yourself so thin on all these other things?
Exactly.
I was like, son of a bitch.
Yep.
This guy actually makes sense. And I was like, damn, way to deflate my ego, bro. But, at the end of the day, that was a big eye opener, right? I started to scale down those other things and scale up on the podcast and things like that, and focus more on the media side of things, and since I've done that, it's really opened some doors, and now it's a career for me. Like, I don't have a marketing degree. Like, I've spent the last almost 20 years in the construction trade. However, what I've done in the fishing world over the past, 5-6 years, was kind of my portfolio and education, so to speak, and on marketing and things like that. And
it translates.
Yeah. And you talked about relationships and things like that. Like, I got this opportunity dropped in my lap because of a relationship I had with another brand who, we had a conversation and they just didn't have the money to bring somebody else on. Right. So then it was like, oh, well, we have this opportunity over here. These are good friends of mine. They're in the industry, whatever. Here's the info. Apply for it. I'm going to be sad because you're not going to be available when I need you, but you should go after this. And, hence, the turn of events. Now I'm
awesome
marketing specialist for a fishing and archery company, and haven't worked a day since. You know what I mean? So it all translates. I know I kind of hopped around in there, but like, you try to lead a horse to water doesn't mean he's going to drink, So it's like, right. I try to reiterate that aspect in so many different ways so people can understand it. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you're not putting in the work and the effort or going that extra distance, you're never going to scale up that ladder, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And that less is more approach is exactly what led us to do what we did with this year. Last year when we went blazing out the doors of GC Fishing, we had an online tackle store. I was trying to create up a little network of discounts and such that I could pass on to the veterans and first responders that we worked with. We had the tournament fishing. We were working with Romans to do the kayak and camping and hiking and golf, all these things. And at the tail end of the year there, Brian Romans and I sat down and we started realizing, you know what? Not saying we're going to not do that, but for right now, we're going to pull this thing back. We're going to put the shotgun away and we're going to bust out some sniper scopes here. That's why what I'm doing now with the True Patriot piece, is straight kayak fishing. And if we're doing it as recreational therapy, that's the purpose. Give these no cost trips, take these guys out, see if we can give them the fishing bug, the same as you and I, were bit with, and see if, see if they enjoy the outdoors as much. And so it's, sometimes you need to do that to get that focus, get that clarity, and then let it grow into those other areas for you when it makes sense, as opposed to just jumping all in and grabbing all of it.
Yeah, you got to let it do its course organically versus forced. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I've learned too. And I know you kind of mentioned that like earlier, like these things don't happen overnight. And I know when I first tried to like start getting into that whole game, it was like, why aren't they calling me back? Why isn't, so and so like, and I like it'd be like the next day, I haven't heard back from them. And I kept checking my email box and Messenger and whatever. And, finally I was just like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, if it's going to happen and that's the way you got to treat it, you know what I mean? And, and I've always to like, I've had folks be like, oh, so-and-so's doing this or so-and-so's doing that. And, you know, you should do this. I'm going to do me. Right. And that's one thing that I've kind of stayed true to is focusing on myself, not what everybody else around me is doing. Like I get that all the time. Right. Like, especially with Paddle and Fin, like we're probably one of the oldest and longest kayak fishing podcasts. Like when we started, there was 2 other shows out there. One was Saltwater Experience, which didn't relate to freshwater kayak bass fishing, which is mainly what we revolve around, but we go out of aspects outside of that now. And there were some guys out in California that were doing one as well. And I've seen so many fishing and kayak fishing podcasts come and go in that time span.
Yeah.
And I always used to get the messages. Do you see so-and-so starting a kayak fishing podcast? Cool. They're like, what do you mean cool? That's competition. I was like, that ain't competition. That's bringing more eyeballs to the sport of kayak fishing. That's just making what we love to do that much bigger.
Yeah.
Like, tell them I'd love to work with them. Let's do a cross-promotional episode. They come on my show, I'll go on their show, things like that. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
And I've grown so many relationships from doing that type of stuff. And it's funny, right? Because I do a lot of research on podcasts and, you know, things like that. And there's a statistic out there that there's something like 3 million podcasts that have been created. However, less than 1 million operate still to this day.
Oh,
and most podcasts created never make it past episode 12.
Oh, wow.
Because and the reason and the thought behind that is well, we made 12 episodes, right? And like for instance, right now we're at 1 hour and 21 minutes on this recording, right?
Great.
Most podcasts will go anywhere between a half hour and 2 hours, right? So you multiply that by 12. Well, we did all this work and spent all this time to do these episodes, but only 50 people listened.
Right.
Like, so what are we doing this for? And they end up just throwing in the towel, right? Because it's that instant gratification thing. And dude, I remember the first episode we got 50 listens on. Because when we started Paddle and Fin, like we didn't ever think anybody was going to listen. We never thought it would turn into what it is now. And it was just me and Scott. And like, I remember screenshotting and texting him of our Anchor plays. And I was like, dude, we just hit 50 plays on episode 1. And we were already on like episode 8 or something like that, or maybe 6. And dude, we got like so excited and like we were like some schoolgirls. And I remember when like the first like kind of like quote unquote fan had emailed us, and it was a dude in Wisconsin who we ended up meeting and having lunch with, and he was like, hey man, love the content, like gives me something good to listen to and some things to think about while I'm on or off the water and things like that. And it was like, holy crap, like somebody's actually listening to what we say and
paying attention.
And it's helping them, right? And
awesome.
Again, hit 100 plays, right? And then you're like, holy crap, like 100 people listen to this episode. And then it turned into 1,000, and then it turned into 10,000, and so on and so forth. And then you're like, eventually you hit 1 million plays, and you're like, how the hell did that happen? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I go to kayak tournaments, and they're like, dude, you're the guy, you're the Paddle and Fin guy. You know what I mean?
You're that dude.
Yeah. I had it at a grassroots event up here one time, and he's like, you're Brian from Paddle and Fin, right? And I was like, yeah, bro, how's it going? And he like kept walking. I was like, where are you going? And he's like, I can't talk to you. You're too big to talk to me, or something like that. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I was like, come back here. Like, how was your day on the water? This and that. And he's like, no, dude, you're big time. I can't. I was like, what the hell just happened? You know what I mean?
I said it at the beginning, man. VIP. I told you.
And it's funny because like people that know me, they laugh at stuff like that, right?
Right.
Because like, I'm, like I said, I'm usually a pretty shy, humble guy. And I honestly wanted to know how the guys day went,
Right.
and
Right.
this dude was like, couldn't talk to me. And I was like, dude, and I ended up going over later and I was like, yo, bro, what's up, man? It's good to meet you. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like, how'd your day really go? And he opened up, but I'm like, that was weird to me. But on
Right.
the flip
Right.
side of that coin, the guy had told me how much listening to some of the podcasts helped him catch more fish, be more efficient on the
Nice.
water, things like that. Not necessarily my show, but like some of the different shows that we offer on the podcast, and that meant a ton to me, dude. And like
Yeah.
I said, education is the biggest thing for me, and getting more people involved in the sport of fishing and staying with it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's huge to me. I want fishing traditions and things like that to carry on way after I'm dead and gone. And if I could be a little itty bitty sliver of that, like, awesome.
It takes one, right? I mean, it takes
Yeah.
one to give you that justification piece, and that just, it keeps you driving, going to the next one. There's a big time, similarity between that and the work that we do. When you see it impact one person, that's the motivator right there. And for me, it's always been creating stewards of our sport. Not the, I'm not pleased when I see folks in our sport, and I don't see it near as much in the kayak side, just because I think it's just the roots of of the origins of where we come from. But creating stewards of the environment, stewards of the fisheries, understanding that when we're there, what we love to do, we need to preserve it, take care of it, so that the next group coming through can still have these resources to them. So not just shying away from people talking about catch, weigh, release, catch, photo, release.
Yeah,
Listen to the conversations. Let's have a talk about, what might, be the next best thing we can do. I don't mind inspections at the ramp because I have a motor on my kayak. Inspect it, man. And if I've missed some mud or whatever on there that I didn't see, tell me about it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to, try to give. And so that's always been our side, is on the fishing tip, is get involved in the sport and be responsible about it. Take care of what we have out there. Try, like you said, the
100%.
educate piece, man. Educate.
And that falls right in the educational portion. You know what I mean? And like, if I had to guess, and I haven't calculated this up, and I've thought recently I should do this, but if I had to guess, I've probably done 400 podcasts in the past couple of years, right? Between Paddle and Fin, Unlimited. Actually, it's probably more than that now that I think about that.
I was going to say, you also have the Unlimited podcast too.
Yeah, I've been on the Unlimited, Paddle and Fin. I've been on other people's podcasts like yourselves. And if I calculate all that up, right, and all those shows combined only helped one person get into fishing, stay in fishing, my job is done. And those 600 plus hours or whatever I spent behind this little microphone was worth it, and that's kind of how you got to approach it, man. It's
well, and it's not a corny, cheesy thing. It's the real deal. I know exactly what you mean.
It is, dude. It is.
And if you feel that way, then you got a shot at this.
Yeah. I would hope I've helped influence one person out of all those podcasts, but no, and it's totally true, man. I mean, it's it's going back to that whole thing of being yourself, and whatever. I mean, on Paddle and Fin, we like to keep our stuff raw, organic. There's going to be bloopers, there's going to be like little things here and there, but rather than this overproduced thing. And I think people relate to that a lot better. You know what I mean? So
agreed. And that's what, you and I spoke about this, none of this is scripted. When you and I were talking, the says, what are we going to talk about? It's, you know what, we're going to introduce people to you, and we'll talk some fishing, and we'll go that way. And you know what, maybe it's gold, maybe it's not. I've had both of those things occur. I've also had a semi-scripted interview make me want to stab myself in the eyes, going, oh my gosh, this dude And it was great people, but yeah, just it wasn't a good interview. I could tell I was not doing a good job of it.
Yeah, it's I've tried to do a couple podcasts like that where I've had like a sheet of paper with a list of questions right here next to
Yeah.
me, right? And it almost feels like the interview is forced, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God. Like I go back and I may be weird, but I listen to a lot of podcasts that I do. Like after you put this out, I'm gonna go
Yep.
back and listen to it to see how much of an idiot I sound like. But
Not at all.
but I've done that, in interviews I've done just for my knowledge, right? Because I'm always
Yeah.
trying to better myself in the way that I present questions or approach an interview or things like that. And
Right.
anyone that I did with like written down questions, I was like, that was just god awful. It was just horrible. And everyone that I've done since then, where it's just super organic, and like I get it too, right? Like I was just asking, I think when you messaged me, and I was just asking like general outline, like what do you want to know? Like because I didn't know if you wanted to just talk about New Canoe or Paddle and Fin, or like again, I'm involved in all these other different things, so I just want to know like,
got a few
hey,
hats.
what do I got to talk about? You know what I mean? And like I told you, I was like, we could do a Joe Rogan podcast where we go for 5 hours, or we could do half hour. I don't care. You know what I mean? But having those organic conversations, and it's like I definitely have a general outline of like general questions that we ask guests and things like that. But we've always told our guests, because we always get like, oh, I'm super nervous, I've never done one of these, or I'm super nervous, this and that. And I go, look, this show is your show. Just imagine that we're just a couple guys, or guys and gals, whoever the guest may be, sitting around a campfire, just shooting the breeze, drinking a beer or whatever. You know what I mean? Yep. And people are like, oh, okay, I could do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of eases their mind. I'm like, there's no structure to this, like we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, and I can steer this conversation one way or another. So
like, don't worry, I got you. Let's go chat. One of the things that I found early on that I started doing, and I have no problem showing it, I take notes based on the things that you say, because there'll be points like that I want to try to come back to. So, because if not, I'll think about the next 5 things afterwards and I'll forget about it. And that's about as scripted as I get with it.
The same thing.
One of the best compliments that I was given, and this is what helped motivate us in the beginning to keep going, because early on, 12 episodes in, I'm like, man, is this what we should be doing? But I kept getting this feedback, and even the guy we talked about earlier, Jody, even said this, man, that was a lot of fun. I really appreciate that conversation. Yeah. If we can create that for our visitors, then I'm banking on that it translates back out to the people that do get an opportunity to listen or watch. We do it. I don't know if I'm positive you guys do it on both audio and video, both, but
yeah.
And it's one of those things that, if you create a welcome environment there, I think it translates back out, and it feels good to hear a guest say that man, that was actually a lot of fun. I'll come back on. That's no big deal. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
It's all we wanted.
It makes you feel like you did your job right. You know what I mean? And that too, right? Like we always ask, is there something you don't want to talk about? Because I think we had an instance one time where we asked a question and they were like, I don't want to talk about that. And we ended up having to edit that out, which was totally fine, but we ask at the beginning, because you don't want to make your guest uncomfortable.
Nope.
But it's we get the same thing too, man. Oh, that was a lot of fun. I don't know what I was so nervous about, things like that. And it's like, see, I told you. And then you end up after the show sitting here chit-chatting back and forth for a whole nother hour off the recording. And you're like, why did we stop? We talked about so much great stuff afterwards. But that's the way it goes, and that's how you do follow-up interviews. Like I've done multiple interviews with or shows with the same person. It's like like going into this next season of Paddle and Fin, like we've kind of made it a tradition. We have our good friend JD DeRosier on every year for the first show of the year for our show that Jay and I
Nice.
do. And it, you know, JD is just such a fun, positive dude. And we're like, this is how we should start the year every year. And we kind of made it a determination after that. And, you know, we always hit him up and he's like, yeah, man, I'll do anything for you guys. I love you, brothers, you know, and
that's awesome.
We know we have a great show, but you know, occasionally you get a guest that just, they don't talk, or they have very short-lived answers. And, you know, it's tough, and you end up getting them to open up and things like that. And that's a difficult task, and it takes a lot of craft and maneuverability through a conversation, but it happens. And once you kind of figure that out, it can be a good thing.
One of the cool things about fishermen is we are never at a loss of stories or talking. You know, when anglers sit down, you mentioned about that asking a bad question. So I had Mike McClelland, Mr. McStick himself. I had an opportunity to marshal at a event that had those guys come down to the FLW and fish a super tournament. And I met Mike and Stacy and absolutely love these two. The McClellans are an amazing, amazing family. Mike agreed and came on my show early on. And I asked him prior to that, you know, about MLF bass, you know, type conversations, you know, should we, you know, and he was always such a consummate pro, Mike is. And I could read in his response and say, you know what, we're not even going to go there. Let's just talk on the other stuff, you know, and we'll go the other path. And I get you. You always want to make sure that you don't put him in a goofy situation. The other one was a couple of anglers that I'll like, Doug Chapin and David Pfluger, Josh Deal. Josh is a good buddy of mine now. He and I text quite a bit, and I always have to make sure it's like, so I'm not going to say anything about this sponsor unless you do, because is that new news, or, you know, is you supposed to be releasing this yet? And yeah, it can get a little tricky with that. Well, listen, man, that Paddle and Fin podcast, it's like you guys have something for everybody there. I'm out there at the YouTube site now, and I'm looking at it. You guys got, you know, some awesome subscribers set up there. Looks like season 3 is that what you're getting ready to launch? A season 3?
No. We're getting ready to launch season 6.
6. Okay. So I'm looking at a season 3 trailer on your site.
Yeah. Like I told you when we started, that needs to be updated, and that's actually what I was working on. That's what I was working on all day today.
Speaking of questions you shouldn't bring up.
Yeah, no.
I just screw up. Look at that.
No. That's been up there for a hot minute, and that is it. The reason why I say it needs to be updated is like that schedule that plays on there is not correct, and some of the shows that are on there aren't on there anymore, I believe, and some hosts have changed, you know, things like that. So. Right. We're getting ready to launch season 6, and because you know, before we started uploading to YouTube, that wasn't till a little later. So you know, we're on every major podcast platform, and currently I'm looking this up because I know I'll be close, but currently, you know, on the podcast platforms, we have 1,110 episodes total.
Holy Moses.
And that's since 2018. So
you guys got content for days out there. And like you said, it's all
dude. It's
perspectives.
It's funny because, like, I remember when we were in season 3, you know, I had some guys messaging me, hey, just found the podcast, man. Love what you're doing. Keep up the good work, this and that. I'm going back to episode 1 so I could, you know, catch up, and we still have that. And I always forewarn people, like, that first season, it's rough. It's rough. There are some good guests, but it's rough, you know, but especially that first episode. And there's some things, like I said in like one of the first or second episodes, and I'm like, and that's something I do every year. I go back and listen to episode 1 at least 2 or 3 times a year. A, to keep me grounded, B, to keep me humble, and 3, to remind me where I came from. And I'll go back and I'm like, what in the hell were you thinking when you said that? Or, something like that. But, I definitely got some things wrong earlier in the years, but, it's good to remind yourself where you came from, especially when you've, kind of climbed up and you've kind of become this bigger entity. Like, I see YouTubers that, I follow and I'm just like, what the hell happened to you, man? Like, and I don't want listeners thinking that same way about me listening to a podcast or something.
Right.
So I try to keep myself grounded and humble and, remind myself like, look, man, like you were never that great at this to begin with. So here you go. But, keeping yourself grounded and being able to, stay true to your roots, like
stay hungry.
Yeah. And
stay hungry. That's the key. That's why I sleep in the back of my truck at least 3 times a season.
Oh, dude. Yeah,
stay hungry.
I've done that more than twice. Like you were talking about traveling to, I forget what lake it was for
Pickwick.
the bass event.
Yeah.
Usually there's the Chicago Fishing Show is going on the week of the KBF tournament down in Kissimmee in January.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And last year they had canceled the Chicago show again due to Chicago politics. We'll leave it at that.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm going to go this year. And I got off work at 5:30 and I got to Orlando at like 11:30 the next morning. And I was like, just drove straight through. And then, or maybe it was noon. And then I was like, I took an hour nap somewhere right by the border of Georgia and Florida. And then I got there and I was meeting Jimmy Skinner down there. And I was like, he's like, well, you going to sleep? And I was like, hell no, dude, we got to go find some fish. Let's go. We went out, fished, then hit the little bar restaurant right there next to we actually stayed in a hotel that time just because it was winter, and ate dinner, get back to the room. He's like, bro, as soon as your head hit that pillow, I don't even think it was 60 seconds before you were snoring. I was like, but that's how I like to do it, where I got buddies, man, they're like, yeah, I know so-and-so over by this tournament, so I'm just going to catch a flight and borrow a kayak and some gear. And I'm like, no, that's not how I roll. But it's funny.
I was at Wilson last year in Kansas, and my first night there, I get there, I'm pretty stoked. Just looks like a pretty cool place. I'm excited to be, fishing a place where there's some good greens in there. Colorado, we don't have a lot of green fish, primarily smallies out here for the most part. But at any rate, so I'm pretty excited. So I get settled in for the night. I've got this utility trailer that I hauled down there, and the way I was doing is the trailer held my unlimited all the way to the camp. At camp, the unlimited goes in the back of the truck, and I set up a tent in the utility trailer, right? So I got this like mobile, command center now. It was phenomenal. Kansas wind takes over, and a like weird microburst storm comes through. Literally minutes before it turned hell, I got back in my pickup and was just watching some YouTube on my phone in my pickup. I could feel the truck actually rocking from the wind. I hear the loud kaboom. I look over, make a long story short, my campsite is annihilated. Okay. These Chinook winds come through and just literally ripped my steel spikes out of the ground that was holding my topper up. I had metal go through my tent and into my freaking air mattress. Everything inside my tent is soaking wet now. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I spend the rest of the night on tornado watch, right? Because I'm like, I'm in Kansas, dog. I mean, this is going to get bad here.
Right. We're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Yeah. I get no sleep that night. First thing that next morning, I'm, cleaning up camp. I get it all cleaned up and I'm like, all right, I got to go fish. All of a sudden this adrenaline thing hits me. So I literally get out and I launch and I start fishing. I didn't make it halfway across, and the calm after the storm, the water was almost like glass. The unlimited is just, scooting, sliding across like butter. And dude, I'm about falling asleep in my kayak. It's just so calming out there. And I'm like, turn around, turn around, get off the water. This is not safe if you're feeling like this. So I wanted to fish, but it's like, yeah, no, safety says get your ass. And so, yeah, I literally packed up camp and I left my trailer there since I had bought the campsite, but I did go and get a hotel. I was like, screw this. I want to shower. I want to sleep. I'm too old for this stuff.
I had a similar experience in 2019. Man, the first stop was Kansas, and it was over on the east side of the state, and I forget the name of the lake, but it's dammed up, and they got a ton of just submerged trees. It was this valley that they dammed up and filled with water, and that's some of the funnest stuff to fish. But was it Center Hill? I forget what it is. But pre-fishing was great, and that's where I first met some good friends of mine now, Sam Jones and Alan Reed. And Sam at the time was in a bonafide SS-127, and so was I, right? But he was paddling, and the day of the tournament, we all thought they were going to cancel it because we were supposed to have like sustained 30-mile-an-hour winds with gust up to 60.
Yeah.
And I remember we're all at the one ramp taking off in the morning, and Sam was going to try to go across the lake. And like, I remember all day thinking like, oh man, is Sam Jones dead? Like, did he die? Because like he was going to try to go. And I guess he got halfway across and then turned around, and because he had done almost did a number 2 in his shorts because like it was just so gnarly out there. And I had a motor at the time, he did not, and so he kind of got stuck in this one bay. But I was just like, man, like I remember like the whole time I'm out fishing, I'm like, dude, is this kid dead? Like,
right,
because it was gnarly, dude. It was like 3-foot waves. I mean, you're in Kansas, middle of nowhere, it's wide open. Like, yeah, we were kind of in this little valley, but for the most part, I mean, that wind was just ripping across that lake, and it was coming long ways. So, I thought it was sketch, even with my little, makeshift 35-pound thrust motor that I had at the time.
Right.
Like, I was going up these waves and down them, and like I'm looking at my graph and it says I'm doing like 0.3 to 0.6 miles an hour, and I'm like, I'm gonna die. Like I couldn't imagine paddling through that stuff, but it's like the stupid things that kayak fishermen do, and
yeah.
Yeah, dude, Kansas, wow.
I always try to keep myself humble with the Unlimited because she is, it's misleading. People think because our sidewalls aren't so high that, that it's not as stable, that it's not as, this or that. No, you'll fall out of it before it ever tips. I'm confident in that.
100%. Yeah.
That thing's secondary stability is just like on a rail, man. When it locks up on that secondary piece, she ain't going nowhere.
For sure.
But one of the downsides, you have to know how to pilot these things because you take those waves cross and you're going to get swamped. Thankfully, the Unlimited has, in my opinion, unmatched drainage. If you pop a couple scuppers, she'll bail quick for you. Yeah, but still, it scares the hell out of you when that water. At least it did me for sure. And 3-footers, dog, that's no joke in a kayak. 3-footers, it was gnarly. Like, in a boat, you'd probably put them at about, even 3-footers in a boat is no joke. But yeah, in a kayak, it's a whole different game. That's the flippers that can just like toss you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you don't time turning around right, you're going for a swim, boys.
Sure. Well, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. We've almost hit the 2-hour mark. We said, we warned that it could be 3 because we're both kind of cut from the same cloth, but I've had longer, man. So we're good. We are totally good. Man, I'll be looking forward to connecting with you again as the season goes on here. And, anytime you guys need anything we can help with over on this end, please know we're here for you.
Same here, man.
I'll be seeing you, of course, each month as we do our team meetings and such.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, we can't thank you enough. This is a huge deal for us to have some extra exposure like this. It brings more attention to the mission that we're on. It used to be where tournament fishing was primary and everything else was secondary. Now our work with the warriors out there, introducing them to the outdoors and fishing, that's our primary. Tournament fishing just gives us a hell of a big stage for that, and that's
Heck
why
yeah,
we
man.
stay. It's kind of that draw. It's that way they're actually out fishing, and like I tell people, yes, they get a chance to go out with a pro angler. I didn't say I was a good pro, but this is what I do for a living. So yes.
I hear you, man. I hear you. No, it's cool, man. I love what you guys do, and it's taking care of vets and getting them outside, man. That's a huge thing, and I've talked to several veterans type organizations across the country, man, and it's some of the work that you guys all do, man. It's I think it makes more of an impact to those vets than you or I or anybody will ever know, and veterans are super important and huge to me. I mean, I'm not a vet myself, but like my grandfather served in World War II, and I got many friends and other family members that have served, and just truly grateful for them, and can't thank them enough, for sure.
It's because of them that you and I, two goofballs like you and I, get a chance to do what we love to do, man.
Yeah, I'm sure they were like, if I would have known that, we would have just stayed home, but no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But no, huge shout out to all the vets out there, man. You guys
Appreciate
definitely give us an opportunity for sure.
All right, brother. Well, listen, we can't thank you enough. Folks, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Go out and check out Mr. Schiller at Paddle and Fin Podcast. Check out all their great content. There's going to be something there that you're going to like. If you like fishing, if you like entertainment, if you're looking to learn more, expand your game, they've got it for you out there. And of course, both of us would be remiss if we didn't say, go out and check out New Canoe, man. Just check out the website. If you're in the Colorado area and you want to go for a run, you hit me up, man. DM me here anywhere along the lines, and I will make sure I would get you in an unlimited, and we will get out on the water. We'll go fishing for a day. I'm always looking for excuses for that.
Same here, man. If you're in that Illinois, Wisconsin area, feel free to hit me up. I'd be more than happy to take anybody out.
Awesome. Good stuff.
Canoe, man.
Good stuff. Well, thank you again, Brian. We appreciate you stopping by.
Anytime, brother.
All right, folks, tight lines. Be safe.